the creators who brought you RuPaul's Drag Race and $1 Million Listing. This is World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Wow Report, where we count down the top 10 things that made us go wow.
Wow.
This past week, here is Tom Campbell and James St. James. Well, let's get into the countdown. Number 10, Tom.
Number 10.
I just binged The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, season 4. Are you guys fans? Have you watched any of them?
I made the mistake. I tried, and then I thought I was watching episode 1, season 1, but I actually started episode 3, season like episode 7 on season 3, and I had no idea what was going on. And I thought this show's stupid, and I didn't watch it.
I'm gonna take that as a no, James.
Right.
Spencer,
I
yes.
watched the first couple of episodes, and it didn't do it for me. But this is the final season, is that right, Tom?
No, they announced the final season, which will be the 5th. This is the 4th season. Listen, Amy Palladino, Sherman Palladino, and her husband. I love this show. It is deeply flawed. It doesn't live in a place of reality, and I love it. And there's it's kind of not the only thing I watch on Amazon, but it's the thing that makes me go to Amazon. Again, I love to hate it, and I hate to love it. All those good things because. Well, go ahead.
Because Amy Sherman Palladino is someone that everybody loves to hate, and like Gilmore Girls to me is that thing that I will marathon, I will binge it, I will watch it, and I will hate it, but I will love every second of it.
But there's some deep enthusiasm that comes through her stories. There's some
she has a way of patter that she does,
and what she chooses to focus on. In past seasons, they spent an episode or two in the Catskills. And they kind of showed the Jewish culture and that, it's set in the 60s. So just incredible detail and sets and a celebration of a lifestyle that we don't see very well represented. For this season, there's all these like sort of stakes where they're losing money. They don't have money, but they all live opulently, which I kind of like. And they all have incredible clothes. Mrs. Maisel has a different outfit for every occasion with the matching hat. But she decides she's going to just do it her way. She's going to break the rules, and she's not going to open for anybody. So she ends up working at a burlesque club, which is the most idealized burlesque club, because she not only works the burlesque club, she cleans it up. She doesn't quite unionize it, but everybody gets better at what they do. As a result, there are some incredible burlesque artists featured in the show doing incredible burlesque acts that don't really make sense, that push credibility. But I'm watching great burlesque acts in the middle of this whole thing. She ends up being the MC. She comes together again with Lenny Bruce. They actually connect in a very meaningful way. But it's crazy. There is one storyline where the season before she was opening for kind of a Sam Cooke kind of a performer, and she did some jokes, and she sort of found out that he's a closeted homosexual. And on mic at an event, she kind of made jokes about it. And so at the end of last season, he dropped her unceremoniously at the airport, like humiliated her. So this episode starts with her being angry at him. But I'm just thinking, shouldn't he be angry at her for outing him in that time? So anyway, the shy character comes back. I'm doing a horrible summary, but I'm in it. I'm in it to win it. I watched all of them. I love to hate it. I love the enthusiasm. I love the references. The Marvelous Mrs. Mabel.
Awesome. Wait, where is it on? Is it on Amazon?
Amazon Prime.
It's Amazon Prime. Right. All right. Okay. Number 9, James.
Number 9.
Number 9, I am so glad you are with us, Fenton. I was afraid you were going to miss it because I needed to talk about the Andy Warhol Diaries, Ryan Murphy's opus to Andy Warhol on Netflix. I watched it. Did you watch it? Have you seen it?
I have not watched it.
Okay.
I want to flash back to a line from Tom a couple of weeks ago. I don't care
Well, I
No,
was going to tell
that's not
Tom.
true.
I was going to say, Tom, just put your earbuds on and listen to some Ariana Grande because you're going to be bored out of your mind for this.
I
But I have
actually
a
care
lot to
profoundly,
say.
but I'm also that jealous bitch. So I
No,
haven't watched it yet. So no.
You are going to watch it, Fenton. You are going to
will.
watch it, and you're going to call me every 10 minutes because there are things to talk about in it.
Tell us, what'd you
I
think?
need to just start off by saying that the AI, which I was dubious about, it works. It is so fascinating to listen because it's actually his voice. You know, it is him talking, but there is no inflection. And I went to Paulette Goddard's house. She showed me her new diamonds. They are spectacular, which is how you imagine that Andy talks anyway. And you've got to think that he would love this looking down from heaven. It's such an interesting choice. And you know that it's just going to get better as the technology gets better. And it's going to be sort of the new norm is what I think.
Saying that it's actually good in a sort of beta version of not perfect technology. You the flat effect.
It wouldn't work for me, but it works for Andy.
Course,
you know,
of course.
Because in your mind you want to believe that that's how Andy talks.
But now that you say that, I think someone should go back through all these Radio Andy shows, sample James's words, and string them together in new sentences. Just have a James bot.
James does Shakespeare. James does Hamlet.
Because I know it won't be monotone. It would just be wild and fabulous.
You know, it's 6 episodes. It could have been 2. They pad a lot, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But it's not the Diaries sort of seem incidental. It's the story of Andy's love life. And the first 2 episodes are Jed Johnson, his great love affair with Jed Johnson. The second 2 are John Gould, which I want to know, Tom, if you remember John Gould at all from Paramount.
I met John Gould. My first lover, Tom Perry, was friends with John Gould because they both worked at Paramount at the same time. And I believe John Gould was with Andy. And I stayed in John Gould's apartment, but I never met Andy. But
they were together for many years, but John was in the closet, and it was a very tortured relationship for him. And the last 2 episodes are about Basquiat, but the story to me is is Jed Johnson. He and his brother Jay, the twin brothers. Jed started off as he was a mail courier, and he delivered a letter to the factory, and everybody fell in love with him and made him quit on the spot and start working at the factory. And he was a custodian. He was the janitor. He was doing, cleaning the floors. And then he started editing. And then when Andy was shot, he moved into Andy's house to take care of him and never left. They just ended up being together for the next 8 years. And he ended up directing Bad. And then he goes on to become an interior designer. And this kid with no experience whatsoever does Andy's townhouse. And it's such a success that Yves Saint Laurent, Karl Lagerfeld, Mick Jagger, everybody is, Princess Margaret. I mean, everybody is having him. All these society women have him, and his taste is just spectacular. And he is the most heart-stoppingly beautiful boy ever. I mean, literally, you see pictures and you gasp. And apparently, by all accounts, he is just this quiet, soft-spoken, beautifully articulate, one big-hearted person. And what happens is he comes across a stash of Polaroids of cocks that Andy has taken at the factory when Andy's doing his
the Torso series,
yeah, the Torso series. But they're a little more than it's not just art. You can see that there's that Andy and who's the Victor Hugo are being a little naughty, and that's what breaks them up. And I want, and I think I mentioned to you, Fenton, I want a Jay and Jed Johnson documentary.
What? Right, because didn't he die in the TWA 800?
Yes, off the coast of Long Island. He was in that, and it's a shame because his career was just skyrocketing, and he was just
of course. I mean, he designed that Andy Warhol townhouse. It's just spectacular and gorgeous.
When you see the glimpses inside, it is utterly. It's just the taste, and when you see Lagerfeld's apartment, and when you see Mick Jagger, I mean,
because he's Andy Warhol's boyfriend, so only the best people are going to want you to design very serious. It's like
even after the breakup with Andy, he still just goes to hot. And then after he dies, his brother Jay, who I'm sort of friends with on Instagram, and is just a wonderful, wonderful. Trey Spiegel is very good friends with him, and he's in the documentary. He's just absolutely wonderful. Very quickly, then John Gould, but the Basquiat stuff is very interesting because he's gayer than I remember. You do get gay vibes off of him. Obviously bisexual.
Oh, please, come on.
And
totally.
he talks about they're very flirty with each other. It's not just a one-way street.
No,
they are
I
very,
think
very flirty.
I know everyone says it was a platonic relationship and he was a father figure. I think they fucked. There's rumors.
I don't know if they fucked only because he was a heroin addict, and I don't think that he was having sex by that point. I think that you get it out and you try and get it hard, and it's just not working, and it's just everyone gets frustrated.
Okay. I'm not.
But but he does talk about in his earlier days when he was hustling and he would have to do $10 blowjobs, and I think that sort of fucked with him a little bit too, but you can definitely see that there's more to the relationship than just mentor mentee, that there is actual affection there.
I think we're going to be talking about the Andy Warhol Diaries many times. And it is, it's a documentary series, and I think there's a lot to unpack there. And all right, let's go on to number 8.
Number 8.
I don't really want to change the tone. I don't want to bring anybody down, but I want to do a rest in perfection. And I want to do it for my dad, who passed away a week ago. He was 98. And the reason, I don't want this to be a sad moment because the last 3 years of his life weren't great. He was bedridden. He couldn't really speak. So I really honestly feel it was something of a release, and feels something of a relief. But I've been thinking about him, obviously. And he was born in 1924. So he was born 4 years before Warhol. And the thing about him is, and I really didn't realize this for the longest time, is I had a slightly complicated relationship with my dad. And I guess, when you have a problematic relationship with a parent, you always think it's your fault, right? But really it wasn't. I don't believe. My dad he joined the Navy in World War II. He was underage. He wasn't 18. He joined the Navy and he went off on the North Atlantic convoys, the Russian convoys. And I don't know if you know what they are. I certainly didn't know. But the Russian convoys, British ships went off to send supplies, and this is sort of relevant, to Russia to help Russia in the fight against Hitler. And these ships in the North Atlantic, I mean, the water, you get in that water and you're dead in seconds. The ships get covered in ice, so much ice that they could just tip over. It was incredibly dangerous. Oh, plus they were sitting ducks for the U-boats, the German U-boats. So, and I remember as a little boy asking and this is where it sort of really got me. I used to ask my dad about the war. You're 6, you're a kid. That's, you want to hear war stories, right? And my dad would never talk about it. He never wanted to talk about it. And he'd say the odd thing, but would really avoid the subject. Now, look, I was 6. So that meant that World War II was only about 20 years away. It only happened 20 years ago, which if you're 6, that seems like another age. But now, being somewhat older than 6, being 60, you realize that 20 years is not very long. It's like 2022 now. 20 years is 2000. So the war for him was incredibly fresh. And it was, I don't know, I've often had this problem of understanding history as something that actually happened, as opposed to something that's just remote, locked off in the past. So that's my dad.
But it happened, and he was still at such a formative young age for something that traumatic to happen. Yes. I can totally see where that would it changes your worldview. It changes who you are.
I think it profoundly changed him. And I think actually it was post-traumatic stress. I think that's what he had. And that explains
that whole generation had it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to talk about him today. For one reason why, because, with this war in the Ukraine that's going on, war is an incredibly traumatic thing. And I don't want to minimize or trivialize the people who are wounded or die or serve in the war, but its effects linger for generations, and it's a profoundly destructive, tragic thing. So I think it's terrible that this war is happening. And I looking at my dad, he was, in a very quiet, unassuming way, he was a war hero, and that he did all that to help Russia, who are being, so ridiculous at this point in history, is just sort of profoundly moving. My dad didn't, sadly, he got COVID. He was in a home. COVID got into the home. It's highly infectious at this stage, not so much lethal if you're injected and what have you and vaccinated, but then it became pneumonia, and I got the call. But he didn't have any last words, but he always told me, he just said, just try to do your best. And I think that's great advice. And yeah.
I do always, I remember when my friend Anne lost her mother and she was in her 50s, and she said, no matter how old you are, you're still an orphan. You still sort of feel like an orphan. There's a feeling that like that
right.
a part of
you've
your
lost
life.
Your mom, and now you've lost your dad. I've lost both my parents, and that the orphan thing is very real.
Yeah,
it is real. And yet I asked my dad once, I said to him, how does it feel when your parents have gone? And he said it was freeing.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that very much. That a lot of people don't really become themselves until after that is gone. That feeling,
and I just think it's, I have to say, I just think it's worth remembering what he did in the war and what so many of his generation did in the Second World War, because we wouldn't be doing this. So much of what we enjoy that we take for granted, not in a negative way, we take it for granted, and I think they would all want us to take it for granted, but we do owe it to them. And I do think it, as you say, Jones, it profoundly changed him in a way that I don't think he ever completely recovered from it,
I never met your dad, Fenton, and I've said this to you personally, but I love you deeply, and I love the man that made you and that raised you.
That is, thank you. I sometimes feel, unworthy in the sense that, like, just to face that kind of terror, like you wouldn't get me on a boat in the North Atlantic covered with ice with U-boats out. I just can't imagine it. So, but rest in perfection, Dad. And it's a happy moment. It really is. Bittersweet, but fundamentally a happy moment. Blake, do you have a question?
I do. What rapper just revealed on Twitter that they're a big fan of early aughts emo band My Chemical Romance? They tweeted, "They don't make music like this anymore."
All right. Name that rapper after the break. You're listening to Wow Report on Radio Andy.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
All right. Welcome back to the Wow Report. I'm Fenton here with Tom and James and Blake. You had a question for us.
Yeah. What rapper just revealed on Twitter that they are a big fan of early aughts emo band My Chemical Romance, tweeting, "They don't make music like this anymore"?
Lil Nas X.
Close, no cigar.
Queen
Ludacris.
No and no. Cardi B. Okay.
I was gonna say Cardi. Yeah, so that makes total sense.
Who knew?
We're the total rap star demo. Thanks for that question.
All right.
Well, I was gonna call her a diva and then a rap songstress, but that would have been too easy. So
we are counting down the top 10 things that made us go wow. We've reached number 7.
Number 7.
Can't get enough of my Lucy and Desi. I was over on Amazon, seeing the Marvelous Mrs. Mabel, and they kept popping up that I should see the Lucy and Desi documentary done by Amy Poehler, with total permission and cooperation with Lucy Arnaz, who is in Palm Springs, 70 years young, and sort of the keeper of all the archive. You may, during the making of this documentary is when Lucy Arnaz found the radio show that Lucy did in '64, which I'm still obsessed with, and learned so much. To me, Talking with Lucy or something, this thing, that's still the best thing I've seen or heard, because it's Lucy talking with people and you get a total sense of her style and her morals, and she was on top of the world. Anyway, and so this documentary, I can't say it told me anything I don't already know.
But you are an expert, so
I am an expert. And Lucy Arnaz did an amazing documentary probably 20 years ago or more on CBS, where she showed home films for the first time and all that kind of stuff. But it's glossy, it's rich with photos. It tells their story, which if you don't know it, you should know it. And it reminds me once again, because I don't really watch TV on the weekends like I used to. I Love Lucy is just the funniest fucking show. And there's so many moments that just blow your head, your mind. It reminds you of that. What's interesting to me, and I don't care, I just noticed, a big part of their relationship and the dissolution of the relationship was Desi's cheating. And at best it intimates it. It just doesn't go, and I don't want to air dirty laundry, but it was a little glossified that way. It's an Imagine documentary, which I know you've worked with the gentleman at Imagine, and it's obviously a labor of love from Amy Poehler. It's lovely, and there you have it. I if you haven't, I couldn't get through. I'm awful. I could not get through the movie because I am so deeply entrenched in the real deal. So this is, if you're looking for more stuff to sort of fix you for your Lucy cravings, go there.
I love you as our Lucy expert, and I just love the fact that these days you can get a podcast, you can get a documentary, you can get a feature, you can get your fix in all these different versions, and they're all relevant, right? They all have.
I did love the podcast on Turner Classic Movies about Lucy is excellent and worth seeing, and I will watch the movie at some point. I don't, sometimes
I loved it. I loved the movie, not as much as I loved the Eyes of Tammy Faye, though, because as we know, Nicole Kidman is in competition with Jessica Chastain for the Best Actress in the Oscar race.
We talked about that last week, and we're feeling good for Jessica. Throwing out good vibes.
Well, I gotta say that I'm a Here's Lucy woman all the way. I that is to me the height of Lucy. I could watch Here's Lucy.
That was her third series. It was on in the late 60s, early 70s. It started off with the opening sequence was her as a marionette. Boom.
And it's Elizabeth Taylor, it is Ann Miller, it is Joan Crawford. Every episode, some Hollywood superstar wanders into her.
And that's where Lucy Arnaz and Desi Jr. play a big part in that too.
Yes, the Anne Margaret episode where Anne Margaret duets with her son is probably my favorite episode moment of any television show ever.
Yeah, and just the fact that Lucy was as big as she was for like 3 decades.
Yeah,
and was revered by everyone and ran a studio. That story is just an amazing story. So yeah,
there would be no Star Trek without her either.
Right, amazing. Is the documentary nominated on the shortlist for the Academy Awards?
I don't
or not.
I don't think
Blake can
so,
look
no.
it up. Oh, okay, didn't make the shortlist.
I wonder if it came out in time. Anyway,
I think it did. Yeah, no, it's definitely on the in competition, but I don't know if it made.
Also, I mean, she was so beautiful. Before the whole life she led before the TV show started. Before, just the most beautiful woman, and just how Hollywood worked. And anyway, I love Lucy and Desi.
All right, let's move on.
Number 6.
Well, I wanted to do Arrest in Power as well, Arrest in Perfection, because we lost somebody this week that was just it was a hard one. It was a hard one to lose. When I got the news, it stopped me in my tracks. Annie Flanders, who was the Empress of Manhattan. She was the doyenne of downtown. You would not have a downtown culture without Annie Flanders. She was the woman most famous who she was editor-in-chief and the creator of the Soho Weekly News in the 70s. And then Details in the 1980s. And if you don't remember Details, the original Details, not the menswear magazine it became after Condé Nast bought it, but in the 1980s, it was the downtown Bible for alternate fashion, street fashion, for the emerging art scene, and for night clubbing. And there was Steven Saban's nightlife column. And if he mentioned you, you had made it. And Annie was without a doubt, she helped so many careers on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. I keep seeing people saying I would not have a career without Annie Flanders. And certainly she discovered Bill Cunningham. Hal Rubenstein started as a food editor there. Michael Musto, Patrick McMullen, so many people. I think Kelly Cutrone maybe was one of those people who got her start there. So I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And interestingly, she had such a life before all of this. She had a store on the Upper East Side in the 1960s called Abracadabra that was one of the first stores to carry street fashion and all the avant-garde designers who could not get into Bloomingdale's or Macy's or Gimbel's. She also worked at Gimbel's for many years. She was a style supervisor, whatever. But so she opened the store, and in conjunction with that, she was in Africa. She had a leather factory that she worked with the king of Mekele, something, I don't know, some African nation that I don't think is there anymore. That she worked closely with the king and to make leather goods, leather handbags, and leather pants and leather fashion and everything. But I remember one night I was with her at Spotlight, and she would tell these stories that were just so jaw-dropping, like you could, and it did just very casually out of her mouth. She was talking about how she was staying at the palace of Haile Selassie, Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, who was the king, the Lion King of Africa, he was what he was referred to. And during an uprising, and the castle was being stormed, the palace was being stormed, and they had to light torches and go through secret underground passageways to escape the murderous mob. She and the emperor were running through these underground passages with torches, trying to get out of the palace, while there was thousands of people climbing the walls of the palace to get them. And she just barely made it out with her lives. And she just had these stories about her life that was she was just an amazing, amazing woman. And she too, her last couple of years, she had dementia, and she was she couldn't move, and she wasn't speaking. And so
that's the saddest thing,
Yeah,
that's just not the way you want to go, really.
No. And once again, so it is a relief. It was a release, and but she is so beloved, and it was just with a heavy heart that that we lost one of the greats. And it's funny,
she was an influencer before influencing, right?
Like very much so. And it's funny because I was just in the edit bay with Blake, and we were going through some of the podcasts, and Michael Schmidt is talking about how she plucked him out of obscurity and made, put his first dress he ever made on the cover of Details, and Cher saw that. And, everything she did, she just helped so many people over the years.
No, rest in perfection, Annie Flanders.
Yeah.
Hey, so number 10, what number are we at? 5.
Number 5.
Is it really? Have we got to number 5 already? Number 5. Yes, I was in France. Tom, I saw you in London, and then I went off to Paris. Very exciting, because they are shooting Drag Race France. First season. And actually, that's where I was when I got the news about my dad. And, there was actually no better place to be. It was like just sort of surrounded by the sort of the vibe of the chosen family, and just seeing these beautiful creatures, these amazing creatures, these funny. I mean, I was sitting in the control room. They're speaking French. I know a bit of French, but not that much. But even though I couldn't basically understand a word, you could just feel the love, and the way the queens interacted with each other with such sort of love and support was just an amazing. So I was really happy to be there.
They speak the international language of drag, Vincent.
They do. But the funny thing is, the temptation often for the queens is to not lapse into English, but to throw in Americanisms, and they're like, the French being the French, they're like, absolutely no. In French, they stop, they back up, they translate it to French. If you can't translate it to French, you don't say it.
Oh, that's great.
So I know that "don't fuck it up" is "ne me pas." But some of the lines don't always translate. But Nikki Doll is one of the hosts, and oh my God, I don't know, like so beautiful, so beautiful, and you know, Nikki Doll does girl drag and boy drag, and her Tom of Finland boy drag. I was like, I didn't know where to look. I was just like, this is too much. It was almost like a Pierre and Gilles came to life, and she's so funny and engaging and natural. I was like, oh my God. I was like,
outside of her season, I had the opportunity to work with and to be with Nikki Doll for one afternoon when Ru was hosting Saturday Night Live. And there was that sketch where Pete Davidson played Chad,
right.
you know, and you know, we were working very quickly, and we were in the city, and we decided to do it. And Nikki Doll called her up. She said, "I'd love to do it," and we got to spend a day with her. And she's such a wonderful person, which we knew from the series, but I got to spend some extra different kind of time with her.
And just so gracious, right? And just
and a great drag queen. And it just goes to show you with Drag Race, we pride ourselves that winning is great. It's a competition that keeps you watching, but it's really about a platform for these queens, and you can do whatever you want with it. You know, I know there's a lot of luck and hard work involved in it, but like, I'm so glad that someone, Nikki, who didn't necessarily rank way up there in terms of last in competition, has found this perfect place for her to thrive.
Absolutely. Is there a second, James? Are you talking about the Balenciaga show?
No.
Oh, did you talk about it last week?
No.
Oh, well, the other thing that happened while I was in Paris, just quickly, was the Balenciaga fashion show that took place in a wind tunnel in a snowstorm. And I have to say, it really stuck with me.
Wait, you went? You were invited to Balenciaga?
No, darling. I just watched the clips on YouTube. No, I wasn't invited. Of course, I wasn't invited. But I was just so taken by it. I mean, I'd never really want to go to a fashion show, to be quite honest. I'd sooner watch them on video. But I just felt there was something so sort of poignant about it. And I wasn't necessarily, I was even sort of grudgingly in admiration of Kim Kardashian wrapped up in Balenciaga tape.
I love that so much. We needed to talk about, because I could go on about that for an hour and a half.
Right.
How did she pee? Does she have catheters under the tape? What goes on?
And it just was tape. It was just, and but I also love the bleakness of it, and I love the fact that it was, the whole show really was a sort of, it was a pageant or a mask in protest of the war in Ukraine. I just
but that is sort of what we're going to be talking about in a minute.
I thought it was some kind of genius. I really did, and I suppose in a way I've been thinking a lot about these things, but I think that masks and pageantry, which, you know, Drag Race is such a part of, but I think that it's a medium in which you can say things, and of course I'm not going to go out to Balenciaga and buy some rolls of tape and dress myself up like that. It as a fashion directive in terms of what you wear, no. But as a sort of statement or a piece of art, I found myself thinking about it, even though the boots were just so absurd. These boots were like these giant thigh-high boots that just go open at the top. I mean, it's like, you're never going to wear those boots in your life. And the other genius thing was that they were carrying, as they were like going through the snow and the mist, and you couldn't see a thing, they were carrying a plastic bag, which was redonkulous, right? Because fashion's all about bags, and 10,000, 20, 30, 40,000 bags, and they're carrying hefty bags. But those hefty bags were made out of leather, and yet it also spoke about, it also sort of brought up refugees, and you're fleeing with your possessions. It was all wrong, and it was all right. I don't know. Let's go to the break, because James will return to this later in the show. Blake, do you have a question for us?
I sure do. So the season 2 premiere of The Weakest Link just premiered this week, and I love that.
23 years after it ended.
It's a reboot, James.
It's
Welcome
back.
to Hollywood.
Lynch is hosting.
Welcome to Hollywood. So one of the questions, I thought this was crazy. Who coined the term EGOT for multi-award-winning entertainers?
Oh, I think I know this.
I could have sworn it was James St. James, but we'll have the answer for you right after the break.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. I'm Fenton here with Tom and James and Blake. We're counting down the top 10 things that made us go wow. And we have a question.
Yeah, I just asked, who coined the term EGOT for multi-award-winning entertainers?
Wasn't it on 30 Rock and it was who's-ma-call-it who first did it? What's his name? The comedian.
Well, EGOT's been around for way longer than 30 Rock.
Are you sure? Was
You
it
are
Whoopi
the
Goldberg?
weakest link. You are the weakest link, James.
Was it Whoopi?
No.
I'm gonna say it was Rita Moreno.
No. Fenton, you got
Liza Minnelli.
No, it was actor Philip Michael Thompson from Miami Vice.
Oh,
What?
I remember this. Yes, because he said he wanted an EGOT. Yes, I remember the interview.
Yeah, I was like, he's the one that came up with EGOT. Everyone talks about EGOT. And I was like, I figured some like journalist came up with it. No, it was Philip Michael Thomas from.
In fact, he was one of the first people. He had a gold-plated EGOT chain, and everyone would say, "What does that mean?" And he'd say, "That's what I'm going to get. I'm going to be an EGOT."
Well, I mean, that's like more of a legacy than his career ever ended up being, right?
Well, how dare
I
you?
hope
Miami
he's
Vice
not-
lives on forever.
It's not over yet.
Let's move on. Counting down top 10 things that made us go wow. We've reached number 4.
Number 4.
I've been very busy. I've been in production, so I can only just read headlines of my social media. But one really caught my attention. I don't know if you guys have dug any deeper, but there is, from Madonna's biopic, that auto biopic, there is actresses who are in a Madonna boot camp trying to be Madonna in front of Madonna to be in the Madonna movie. What's this movie going to be like, you guys?
That should be the movie. I hope they're filming that.
Well, I do want to just ask you if you remember, Fenton, that we had a show that I had come up with that we tried to do, and it was about, we wanted to have celebrity impersonators battle it out in a house to see who was the best Dolly Parton. And they
Look-alike Hotel.
Yes, Look-alike Hotel.
It happened years before me, but it's still talked about. I've seen the tape. It's the most legendary development at World of Wonder.
Because we had Dolly Parton and we put them in sack races so that their fake boobs would bounce. But then I remember it was like it was battle to see who, and I can't imagine doing that in front of Madonna. It must be so nerve-wracking.
You know, for Hairspray, the musical, I know they have it's still popular, but it was so popular that they had like a Tracy Turnblad camp. I knew about that. Like there was plus size girls like doing the cha-cha and things like that. But Madonna and doing it in front of her. How can, James, we need to talk offline because I feel like there is a new Look-alike Hotel in this. There really is.
We should bring the Look-alike Hotel back. But I can tell you that, do you remember that amazing live Instagram that Madonna did with Diablo Cody, where she was writing the script that I was so compelled by, I had it transcribed? Well, Diablo Cody is no longer working on the project. She was unceremoniously dismissed. And she reached out to some other people who we know who they are.
Madonna reached out?
Yes, when Madonna calls. Los Javis, the two Javiers, who are two of the judges on Drag Race Espana. Yeah. So they waved the script in front of me. I was not allowed to take it. I was like,
what did it smell like?
It was just like, I was just like, oh my God, well,
it's funny because some of the actresses' names that they keep tossing out who are going to play her, you keep thinking, how on earth? Like Anya Taylor, what's her name? She might be a good one. There are a couple people that can do it. I'm fascinated to see how it's all going to shake out.
Has anyone in your mind, has anyone produced a movie about themselves
that's been any good, right?
I didn't go there.
No,
That's
but
never
it's true
been
because
done.
it's like if you sort of have to give up control, because if you're too controlling, it's like I didn't wear the skirt wasn't 5 inches,
Right.
it was 6 inches, and the plaid was red and not blue, and you're going to get too lost in the detail.
But I think if you watch the Diablo Cody Madonna thing, I think you might get a hint or two that the problem there is going to be a dramatic arc. I think she's going to be perfect and fully formed from the moment she appears in the movie until the end of it, and nothing will really change. She's just going to be bossing people around the entire time.
Oh my God, a James St. James boot camp. People who are trying to be James St. James.
In
Just a
front
bunch
of
of
James
fat
St.
old
James.
bald
Oh my
queens
God.
sitting around.
I'm going to be rich. Rich,
Bitching.
I tell you.
Should it be a musical?
Of course it's a
Please.
musical. All Tin Pan Alley 20s songs.
I cannot wait to see this movie.
Ukulele 30s music.
That's a good idea. I love that.
Tiptoe through the tulips.
I think we can safely say it doesn't really matter what the movie is. People will flock to it, right?
We will be there Thursday at 11:59 for the midnight screening.
And
We'll be
Friday and Saturday and every. All right, let's move on to number 3.
Number 3.
Number 3 is my new recurring segment, which I began last week. It's Moral Dilemmas with James St. James.
Who better to answer our moral dilemmas than James St. James?
Well, as I said last week, I'm glad that Fenton is here this week because Fenton and Tom are at opposite ends of the moral spectrum, and that Tom has a very strict sense of ethics that he follows. He's very moral, but he's not judgmental, which is a tribute to his character. He's moral without being judgmental. Fenton, on the other hand, is a very perky anarchist who is a bit of a nihilist and has a very laissez-faire attitude when it comes to morals and things. So,
How
having
dare
said
you?
no, it's a compliment. It's a compliment. You're very loosey-goosey when it comes to how to.
I predicted last week when he said the same thing, Fenton, that when you heard the show, he'd be fired. It was going to be James St. James' last appearance, but clearly you missed this broadcast.
But anyway, so I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I've been seeing happening, especially on social media, and it has to do with Ukraine. And when it first started happening, it was happened during Fashion Week, as you just mentioned, and it was Fashion Week in London, Milan, Paris, New York, and coincidentally, this season the trend is primary colors. It is reds, it is blues, it is greens. There's not a pastel in sight. It is all bold colors. So every designer has a blue gown and a yellow gown, and they have been showing on Instagram putting the blue gown and the yellow gown together, saying hashtag we support the people of Ukraine. And you start to see, I'm not going to name the jewelry company that did it, but they showed canary yellow diamonds and sapphires together, saying we support the people of Ukraine. And you see Instagrammers, influencers wearing a blue and yellow bikini saying hashtag Ukraine. And now we all feel helpless, and we want to do what we can to support the people of Ukraine. It's a terrible situation. And when you feel like I'm showing support, like I want to show support for what's happening. But I remember during the height of Black Lives Matters, when there was all the protests and all that stuff, and everyone put a black square on their Instagram. And after a while, Black people themselves started saying, stop it, white people. This is performative. It is superficial. You aren't accomplishing anything if you aren't putting your money where your mouth is. Fenton, I ask you, what do you think about the blue and yellow craze on social media, and how do you show your support without it being performative?
I think you show your support by contributing money to a cause that's appropriate, whether it's money or clothing or resources. But funny enough, my dad just passed, and my sister went and took all his stuff and sent it off to the Ukraine. So, all his clothes and things. So I think that's what you do. But I think that It is weird, isn't it? The virtue signaling. You don't want to ban people expressing themselves or expressing their support, but I suppose the idea is that to really make a difference, you should do something material as opposed to just.
Do you castigate the person? Do you if an influencer shows up in a blue and yellow bikini saying I'm for Ukraine, do you say cut it out, bitch, put your money, or do you just let it pass and say understand that they're trying their best?
We live in this era of virtue signaling. Kind of social media is that, right? It's like I'm eating the right thing, I'm wearing the right thing, my body looks a certain way, so it makes sense that this is happening. I'm a little. I don't know what to. I almost don't feel like posting anything. I feel like anything I'm posting is kind of like in bad taste because of what's going on. You got to live your life while there's stuff happening, and you do have to give money. And then I always ask how much. I know it's crazy, but like how much, how often? Like I'm like,
well, I mean, a lot of younger people don't have money to give, and they sort of feel like this is what they're doing. I know that I don't have a huge following, but I feel like it's sort of my duty when there's breaking news to repost and just to share the news and the things that are happening in the images. So I feel like that's what I can contribute because I can't be giving lots of money.
I think the difficulty is also that we're newly born into this performative era. This is the screen age, and we've never been in this position before. And I think we're all finding our way, trying to figure out what the rules might be or what the best way to behave.
Or during the time of Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, because it is the screen age, and so it is so much of our lives is on a screen or interacting with a screen in some way. And I think we're still figuring a lot of that out. But
for those of you listening and not watching, Fenton is wearing a blue shirt and has yellow wallpaper behind him.
But that was not planned.
Yeah, but it is because I feel like some people are feeling very pure in their intentions about posting these things, but sometimes it just comes off as being
tone deaf.
Yeah.
I like wherever you can to look at the intentions and hope for the best.
There you go. I love that. Hope for the best. That's good. Number two. Yes. So after being in France, I went to Spain where they are making Drag Race Espana. And
Season two?
Season two is in the can and it's coming soon to Wow Presents Plus, as of course is Drag Race France. But I actually physically met in person Los Javis. Javier Ambrosi, Javier Calvo, the two producers and creators of Veneno, James.
Oh yes, of course. She just passed away. Veneno just passed away recently.
Sadly. But what I also did, it was so lovely to meet them. They are just as wonderful in person. But what I also did is they created, wrote and produced the longest running show in Spain. Theater show. It's called La Lamada, and it is two girls go to a Christian camp, and it's a musical, and one of them basically has a religious awakening, and in the form of Whitney Houston songs, and it is so clever and so cute. I can understand why literally it's been running for 10 years. And I didn't understand, again, I spent most of my trip in Europe not understanding a word. It's all in Spanish. And I speak even less Spanish than I speak French, which is practically zero anyway. But because of the Whitney Houston songs, God appears and he's into Whitney Houston. And it's so genius because it makes this point that religion should be a fun thing and that your spirituality should be a fun thing. And so this person who isn't really Christian finds her God through this God who loves Whitney Houston. And all the people they've got the sort of old wizened Mother Superior and the young convent inductee who's actually a lesbian and shouldn't be there, But long story short, everyone gets what they want and it's a happy ending. And these guys are they are so talented. They've been together 10 years. They're a couple. They're beautiful to look at, but they're beautiful people too. And just so creative. And just that, Spanish drag are camp is its own brand, and it's just sort of extra. It's like Baroque architecture. It's just like extra, And they're coming to the States. I can't wait for you both to meet them, because when they do, it's going to be like, the Queen of England coming to visit. We're going to roll out the red carpet.
Oh, wonderful.
Because they are just so creative and so funny and warm and vibrant, and just more of what we need.
Question: what's the name of that series, and how do we get to see it?
It's called La Alameda. It's actually, they then went on to direct and produce the movie version, which is on Netflix, and it's called Holy Camp, and you can watch it. It's subtitled Holy Camp. They've also done Veneno, which I think is on HBO Max, and then Paquita Salas, which is a kind of 10%, like Call My Agent, that French series.
Yeah.
Like, it's about a bottom feeding agent. And so that they've done several seasons of that. So
we love bottom feeders.
And as they just relayed, Madonna called them to fix her movie, and I believe they politely declined.
Wow.
Presumably. Well, anyway, I shouldn't. I didn't read the script. I don't know, but when Madonna.
No.
Was that Madonna? She just called you.
Yes, I'm on this cat. Yes, hello? It's my Madonna. Yeah, no.
We're going to take one more break, and when we come back, reveal the number one thing this week that made us go, wow.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Well, we're back. We've been counting down the top 10 things this week that made us go wow. And we have reached number one.
Number one.
And we are joined by, it says here, VP of Wow Presents Plus. No, Steve Sims is our VP of Wow Presents Plus, and he is here to tell us all about our number one this week. What is it? Reveal.
It is World of Wonders Frockumentary. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Hey.
Tell me, what in the name of Jiggins is a Frockumentary?
Well, a Frockumentary is the 4-episode story of the Frock Destroyers, who were the girl group winner of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 1, featuring Bag of Chips, Blue Hydrangea, and Davina DeCampo. And essentially what we did was we followed them through 2020 into 2021 during the height of the pandemic, since DragCon 2020, which was the last DragCon. DragCon 2020 UK, which was the last DragCon. And then we, after that, the idea, Randy, Fenton, Tom, you guys had the idea of doing an album following the Frocks further into their journey. We started documenting it like we would for most of our shows and projects. And then the world shut down. And we thought it would be fun to kind of just utilize this source of communication and video recording, Zooms, video streams, and follow their journey and have a couple small camera crews along the way. And that ended up being 4 episodes of what we're calling Frock Destroyers Frockumentary.
Without a spoiler alert, I watched episode 4 last night, and it was so good. Just the joy it brought me to see Bagger and Blue and Davina. I mean, what a trio. And just the clips of them performing at DragCon, literally, days before the world shut down, the frenzied seats. All I could think of was like, who in that audience had COVID? Because someone did.
I think about that a lot when we came back from the UK, but it's honestly like, I remember being in that moment and standing next to Kelly and just looking down and being like, this looks like Coachella. Like, it just looked insane. And to think like, well, now they have to go on tour and they have to do more stuff. And then a month later, we were all at home.
I will go out with my 1960s ancient comparison, but I thought their performance, the Frock Destroyers performance at DragCon UK, was like the Beatles. I had not seen such frenzy from the crowd. It blew. I was not there in person. I've just seen the documentation of it, and it blows your mind.
It's funny. A lot of the raw footage from episode 4 that Fenton just watched is, not to spoil anything, but is their live performance where it ended up in 2021. And going through the raw footage, I mean, people crazy over Baga, like the Beatles. Or it reminds me of when we did the Britney Spears documentary and just her being through Vegas and like crowds of people chasing after her. It's Bag of Chips. It's so fantastic. But yeah, it was a really fun project, and for WoW Presents Plus to be able to have another WoW doc that's a series, and it also different than just Werq The World or God Save the Queens. I mean, this definitely took a deep dive into something that we all lived through, and we got to see the adventure of these three amazing drag queens and what they did from everything from home to in this bubble to out in the world when they were able to get released.
And Leland and Freddie Scott are recording them from LA. I mean, it's coast to coast. It's a global sensation, the whole thing. And you guys did a great job of putting it together. Can't wait for the world to
And
see
it's
that.
nice to see what they were doing during the pandemic because, Blue and Bagger both have been on Drag Race UK versus the World, right? So you can watch this series and see what they were getting up to before that. And I think the seeds were sown, don't you think, Tom, for the treasonous exploits and hijinks that went on in Drag Race UK versus the World.
And I have to also, I'm a huge Davina DeCampo fan, and it's great to see her. I want to see more of her, but it's great to be with her. The three of them together, they really are a group. They really do represent all these different kinds of attitudes and drags, and they're a winning combination.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you for all that you do. WoW Presents Plus. There's so many great originals and more to come, right? What's coming up?
Well, coming up later this year, we have the return of which will be announced. Date will be announced soon. We also have the Lawrence Chaney series called Tarting Around with Lawrence Chaney. And then we have, Tarting Around. And then we have Vanjie, 24 Hours of Love, which will be coming very soon, which is the infamous Vanjie dating show, which the world is waiting for.
Yes.
And we have this season 2 of the podcast coming up. Don't forget, oh my God.
We do. Night Fever. Oh my God.
Night Fever is coming up, and we have some exciting guests, and I'm trying to get James to just keep doing them all year round, but we'll see what we can do.
The other day, Fenton had said, we're going to do 6 or 8 seasons, and I was like, oh dear God, we're going to have to renegotiate my contract after that.
I believe that on WoW Presents, James is paid less than a latte.
But you get so much more.
But I do want to just tell everybody that they should sign up for WoW Presents Plus at wowpresentsplus.com.
It is a special channel.
I mean, it's practically free. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, James. Thank you, Tom. Same time, same place next week. Until then, go out and do something that makes the world go wow.